So Joe Castillo, why don't you take over?
Thank you very much, Francis. Judy, thank you so much. Appreciate you. ePart Trade final hour, day number 2. So much more to come. And we're going to end it off with some great drag racers spanning the globe. I see Jimmo there. Jimmo, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, Joe. How about you?
Oh, I'm so great. I see Bruce out there. I can see that Phil is signing on. Oh, Phil is still in Australia, apparently.
Yeah, I'm upside down for some reason.
He's in the upside
That is
down.
awesome.
There it is.
I told
Bruce?
you Phil was
Hang
entertaining.
on, let me fix this.
Okay.
I'll try and fix this.
All right. Well, whatever happens. And then Clay Millican, of course, Clay, hello and welcome everybody. Remember, guys, if you're watching, the chat section is there for our viewers. If you want to put a question up in the chat section, we may ask it, but definitely feel free to get involved and hopefully everybody share this. There you go, Phil. Good job.
There you go.
Back right side up. So this is a great panel. Bruce and Phil, your dad, I mentioned drag racing royalty down there, and Jimmo tells a story about, coming down there to like reconnect with his passion for drag racing. So I want to start out with you guys. I know, Bruce, you were here in the States for a while this season. Tell us about the scene down under, because it's huge. It's not as big as the United States, but the intensity is there.
Oh yeah, we have. We've probably got six of the best top fuel cars outside of the US. I don't want to discredit our friends in Europe, but we've probably got 6 of the best. Any of them are capable of running better than 370s. Having said that, we haven't run 370 yet, but we will. And it's each meeting under our new Burson Australian Top Fuel Championship run by Nathan Prendergast and Andy Lopez. We've been able to extend the series Australia-wide now. It's 7 events, and you never know who's going to win. I mean, last year's champion pulled a Rob Bruins and never won an event, but he was Australian champion and he never won an event. So it was great to be part of. We won the opening round of the new series, which was great at our local track. And then I think there was only one repeat winner all season. So, but Pete Zebras won the inaugural Stan Sainty Cup, and he did it by being consistent, but never winning an event. So it was pretty cool. And we got the Raposada boys. They've, the years of racing in America have helped them well. And yeah, so, and we have the Lamartina team as well. So it's really good series.
So for those that are uninitiated, we got 2 tuners and we got 2 drivers. So there's all kinds of different possibilities for this conversation. Jimmo, let's get your side of it as well, though. You have spent time down under and you're going back. You had a great year in the NHRA with Clay. We'll get into a lot of that. We've got an hour to kill. We'll get the drivers involved. But what's the allure for an American to go down and check out the Australian drag racing scene, not just in the future, but in the past? Talk a little bit about it so we can understand.
Well, one thing I got to say is, both Bruce and Phil, these guys are my brothers. They're my Aussie brothers, and Jim Reed, he's like an Aussie dad to me, and the whole Reed family's just been nothing but top notch to me. And same with all the Aussie teams over there, the Raposadas, the Lamartinas, everybody has just been fantastic to me over the years. And, back years ago, Bruce and Phil came over and they were looking to buy a race car. Phil was going to take over driving from his dad, and which those are some big shoes to fill. And, they bought a car from us when I was working for Coletta Motorsports, and bought a turnkey car. They did everything right. And, we put the car together for them. And Dave Grubnick went down with us, and that was a lot of fun, entertainment like you've never seen with Grubby down there. And, we ran a car for them. And Grubnick drove that car. Scott Coletta drove the car that we built for Santa Raposarda and his team. And we went down there, had a great event. We had so much fun. My wife Tammy was with me. My daughter Ashley, Scott and his boys were down there. And his wife. We had so much fun, and the reads were just so fantastic to us, and we developed this friendship and brotherhood that's, you know, gonna last, you know, forever. And you know, I know when Bruce came over this year, when he came over before the Charlotte race, he flew into Dallas, or excuse me, the Reading race, he flew into Dallas. And my girlfriend, Sarah, she says, you're like a little kid, like you're excited to go pick up, like you're going to pick up your girlfriend or something at the airport. But, you know, I hadn't seen Bruce in such a long time because of COVID. And last time I was down there, I think it was in January of 2020, we went down there racing Willowbank. And then when I came home, of course, after that, the whole world changed. And, you know, we hadn't seen each other up until that point. So it was a lot of fun being able to see Bruce for the first time in person in a long time. And then, you know, have him join me, you know, on Clay's team and be a part of our team. It was just fantastic. It was probably some of the best times I've had in a long, long time. And it was a lot of fun. And then, you know, Phil, you know, he's got this stash going now. I don't know what he's got going on down there. I think didn't your dad have a stash like that years ago?
He does. We have a thing for men's mental health down here. We call it Movember. So you raise funds for, and I've lost a couple of close friends to suicide. So a buddy of mine rang me, and his dad, we lost him when we were about 21 through suicide. He said, will you do it for me and promote it? We're racing in Perth. And I keep getting called Ron Burgundy. So all the commentators, oh, Ron Burgundy's coming to the start line. So yeah, it was, my wife will be happy tonight. It comes off. So
tonight it comes off. I tell you what, Phil is one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. And just good people. They don't get any better than that. You know, that's,
he's got to stay classy. He has to stay classy.
Stay classy.
Yeah, stay classy, Sydney.
Yeah.
Clay, get in on here. Let's bring Clay Millican on the deal, because I spoke with Clay a little bit earlier today, just kind of prepping on this. And Clay did not have the relationship, from what I understand, Jimmo, that he just met Bruce and now you guys are buds, right? So, but that's kind of cool, Clay, that Bruce came over and embedded with your team for 3 races. And that's got to be a great experience all around. But what was that like for you, Clay?
Well, after having met Bruce, I now know, having not met Phil, that Phil is obviously a genius for having won the races he has, because I don't know how the car starts with Bruce running it. I'm just throwing it out there. You know, Phil must be.
It's all me, Clay.
It's the driver.
Drivers
versus crew chiefs. Point.
Yeah, it's all about me.
No, the truth is, I mean, Bruce made a huge impact right away with, I get in trouble for this, but with our kids, we've got a very young group of people, and he immediately had an impact on them that we noticed. And to be honest, it took us a few weeks to kind of get over that. I mean, he had such an impact on how they were doing things. I think that he is just such a easy to get along with guy that our kids were immediately comfortable with. Just any question they had, immediately they asked him, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, I hope we get to do that some more. It was a really, really fun few weeks. And I tell you, you know, I told you this earlier, and I hate to give him I hate to swell his head up any more than it is already, but the guy could be a crew chief on any car over here in America, no question about it. I mean, he's really, really good at what he does. He's very thorough at what he does. And to be honest with you, the only thing you don't want him to do is install a toilet in your trailer.
That's only because you let Doug Stringer or Lance Larson sit on it. That's why it broke.
Oh.
And I'm saying that on record.
Notice I'm staying away from that, of course.
Yeah,
I would.
See those guys.
Okay. We're known for our subtlety down here.
Yes, but about that, Bruce, what about that? In that, Is that something you'd like to try to do? I know you've got a great program going on down there, but there is something to be said. Santo came over here, ran his cars a few years. Would you like to do that at any point in your career in the future?
Phil and I have sort of kicked it around a lot, and then back in the day,
I've told him to.
Really?
Yes, he and Jim will remember this. Bruce was on a family holiday, a family non-drag racing holiday, which Reeds never do. And I think Jimmo was working there, and I think somebody had left the race team, or the crew chief had left, and Jimmo said to him, "Hey, can you hang around?" I think he was working with Donnie Bender at Colettas. And I'm telling him, just stay there. Oh, I got my business back home. I'm like, stay there. If you love what you do, you never work another day in your life. So I rang him from here and I said, stay there. I said, don't worry about our car. I said, just stay over there. But he wouldn't listen to me.
It's tough. I mean, our family down here is really tight. Me and Phil and my sister Kelly and our other brother Luke, and then my kids. Adam and Ashley, we're close, and my partner Kim and her daughters, we're all close, and our business is family orientated, and our racing is tight. But we're Kim and I are planning, and if all the stars align, we're planning on coming over for hopefully Vegas, Pomona, Phoenix, then coming back home because we have a few more races. And then maybe coming over towards the end of your summer and going to Indy, Reading, Charlotte, St. Louis, Dallas. I don't think I've missed any. Something like that. We're probably going to get a motorhome and play, vacation holiday with the Millicans and tag along, and might even have to buy a plastic dog so that we fit in. So, but we're just weighing up those options now, and costing it up, and just trying to make it fit so that we might be able to do that and come over and pester the crap out of Jimmo and sit in the lounge and eat Tim Tams and listen to Clay's stories and hog a bit more of his YouTube channel and over promote myself, and hopefully if my ability keeps up with my arrogance, I should be doing okay.
I love it. That's a well-crafted plan there, Bruce. That's no thing. And I too have hogged Clay's YouTube channel. So you're in good company.
Yeah.
What were your takeaways though? And I want to ask Clay and Jimmo about the team and their performance this year. And there was a transition. Doug Stringer sold the team. But wow, what a year you guys were able to have. But I want to hear your observation about it first, Bruce, like coming over and being injected right into the middle of the NHRA countdown, right? You were there for Reading,
Yep.
there for Charlotte, you were there for St. Louis, the start of the NHRA countdown, some big races, big runs, high intensity pressure. What were your observations of that whole situation?
Well, I think my brother Jim here was able to focus on being a crew chief only. That was one of the major things. Plus, obviously, with the transition to the new team, some new parts, but just the general, you step inside that rope and it's led by, I'm pointing down here, I feel like the Brady Bunch, there's all these squares on the screen. Clay down here, led by his level of enthusiasm and just, there's barely a smirk in the pit area. Everything was just happy in it. Then we went to Reading and we did pretty good there. And then Charlotte, we really hit our strides. Or shall I say, Jimmo really hit his strides. And that confidence of those good runs and no parts damage flows down to the crew. We have a saying down home that the food tastes better when you win. Well, it certainly tastes better when you run some 360s and consistently, and you're not shoveling aluminum up off the asphalt when you get back to the pit area. So, and the flow on from there, I can't vouch for what happened after I left. I mean, it's kind of, got a little average there, gentlemen. I don't know what you did there. Maybe fix.
You weren't here anymore.
Too busy focusing on bathrooms and not enough on the race car. Who's to say? But no, it was terrific. I mean, I've been coming over there now since 1983, and no disrespect to any to the other teams that I've hung out with, but it was probably it was probably the best trip I've ever had from just a feel good. The car ran great. The kids on the crew, and I can say that now because I'm 60 next year, but the kids on the crew they're infectious. Their enthusiasm is infectious. We all had dinner together more times than I can count, including that monstrous buffet in Reading. What was that called?
Shady Maple.
Shady Maple. Oh my God. That is like 20 sizzlers bolted together. And it was just great. I mean, I was happy to come home, but I was extremely sad to leave. And plus with Rick and Robbie, the team owner and the team manager, and Stacey in the office, it was just sensational. It really was. And of course, the level of competition too now, there's 12 next year. It's going to be even better or worse next year, where there's going to be 12 or 14 cars that are going to, I don't think you're going to know who's going to win at each event you go to. I mean, holy hell, I'd hate to be predicting it.
Yeah, it's going to be very tough. And that's great for those of us who love the sport and want to see it grow. And I feel like it's having a moment right now. And I feel that Rick Ware wanting to get involved. Tony Stewart was the high profile non-drag racer to come drag racing in 2022. But Rick Ware is part of that story. And as much, and Clay knows this, I want to make sure Doug Stringer gets his due for starting this team and launching the team and keeping it going and getting it to the point that it got. But now Rick comes in, and an influx in parts, pieces, funds, sponsorship, locks things down for several years, signs Clay, stability. Jimmo, that's what it looks like you guys have going into next year. Clay has shared with me that there will be a new chassis, a lot of stuff. So give me the state of the team right now, Jimmo, coming out of a 2022 where you ran half the season with some old parts, and then you got new parts, and now you got a couple of months to get things ready to go. Talk a little bit about Rick getting involved in NHRA drag racing and the state of this Top Fuel team.
Well, with Rick getting involved in the team, that was just the shot in the arm that we all needed. We loved working with Doug. Doug did everything he could to get us out there and have us at all the events, leading up to Rick purchasing the team. And, and I'm very appreciative of that, because it got me back on a Top Fuel car, got me back on a team going to all the races that was, trying to compete, for a top 10 spot, and ultimately, a chance at, competing in the countdown for a championship. And, when Rick took over, obviously at Indianapolis, we had our pit area was filled with all sorts of boxes and stuff. It looked like Santa Claus just crashed his sleigh in our pit area, and a bunch of race car parts, came out. But it was huge for our team. And what Rick's really brought to the team, he has an enthusiasm level that I guess is very similar to Clay. Clay's probably one of the most enthusiastic people I've ever met in my life. And Rick's very much that same way. And, I met with Rick today. I just got to Charlotte today to our shop in Mooresville. And, Rick is like, he saw me. He was like so happy to see me. Came up, gave me a big old hug. And then, we went back and talked, and he's so fired up about next year. And he would be happy if we were running a drag race this weekend. Because he's like, oh, you've got these new clutch parts you need to try, or, oh, you need to do this. And hold on a second. So, our goal over the winter is to organize and, really in inventory and try to make things more efficient. We have a new chassis that Don Schumacher Racing built for us that we'll probably be picking up within the next week or so. So that's exciting. We're going to take our current car. We're going to get a new front half put on it. We've got, we're going to be ordering blocks. We're going to be ordering heads. We're going to be, really trying to build an arsenal of parts up that's going to allow us to go out and compete. week in and week out. And Rick's really given us the ability to not worry about things. You know, because before we had to plan things a little bit differently. And Clay and I, we always kind of had a game plan of what we were going to do. And we knew, you know, that we had to be careful with what we had. And our goal is that we wanted to qualify solid. We always gave it like one shot to try to qualify solid. And then we tried to save everything for race day because, you know, winning on Sunday was the most important thing. And, you know, we went through a 5-race stretch there in the middle of the summer where we lost first round 5 races in a row. And when you added the total time that we lost by, what was it, 1/10 of a second, Clay, at 5 races, when you add all those 5 races up. And it was very frustrating because we knew we needed to push the car harder, but we just weren't in a position to push the car harder. So when Rick came on board, we started pushing the car harder, and we started, you know, running, you know, over 330 miles an hour and running more consistently in the 360s. And you know, we're excited about where we're at moving forward for next year. I really feel that we have a car, we have a combination, we have a crew, we have a driver, we have a team owner that that we can compete, and we could be a top 5 car next year. And if you're a top 5 car, you can compete for a championship. And it's exciting. It's I know my excitement level is through the roof, and Clay's is probably, his is even more because he's just that way.
You tell us, Clay.
I am just pumped for all of it. I mean, everything Jimmo said, you know, it is 100% right on. Rick is definitely fired up about this drag racing thing. I mean, and if you think about all the other things he has going on, it's like pretty cool that he spends as much time as he does working on what we're doing. I mean, they just made an announcement yesterday that his NASCAR team is now going to be aligned with RFK, which is Roush Fenway Kozlowski team, you know, I mean, and yet he's calling me, sending me graphics and things, you know, at the same time. I'm like, kind of, don't you have something pretty important going on that y'all are just announcing? And but he's sending me stuff about what we're doing with the race car next year, and you know, what else do we need to be doing? You know, who do we got to go see at the PRI show? What's the schedule? What's your schedule? You know, and it's fun. I mean, it really, really is fun, you know, that he's so fired up about it. And it was obvious, you know, as I told you, Joe, you mentioned it earlier today, round cylinders do make a difference, you know, and we were able to have, you know, fresh blocks and stuff. And it does, you know, a lot of people like, you know, what y'all do, you know, what did Jimmo find? Jimmo just found that he could lean on the car a little harder and know that we could make it to the next round if we did hurt it. You know, I mean, it was, these things are so hard to run. I don't know anything about it. I'm the guy in there that looks at squiggly lines, and I just remind Jimmo of stories from, you know, my 20+ years of doing this. Well, I remember one time this happened or that happened, and I felt this or did that, you know. I don't know how to run one of these things. I'm just proud to be on a panel with, I don't know how much Phil knows. He probably knows way more about it than I do about running one of these things, but
Not really.
I'm excited to get going.
Yeah, what about
Joe?
Phil?
Don't let Clay fool you, man. This guy is way more switched on than he lets on.
No,
He's like my helper. He's great.
Real well, you know what?
He's talking about.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that because it seems like the way the crew chiefing deal has gone, there's 2, right? Like on many teams, there are 2 crew chiefs, and one handles like the fuel system, the other handles the clutch, an area of expertise. And I wonder how the breakdown works with you, Jimmo, on this team. Are you the guy making all the calls? Is there someone for you to lean on? Clay has said it's not him.
Well, I think it's a team effort. You know, we have a great a group of people, and Clay and I have, I mean, our communication between us is amazing. And, you know, and I've been pretty fortunate. I've worked with some great drivers in the past. Most of them, their last name was Coletta. You know, and Doug, you know, Doug was always pretty silent, but he, you know, Doug was, Doug was pretty switched on. I mean, anybody who can build their own sprint cars and fly airplanes and do everything that he did, he was a very, very switched on man. And then, you know, Scott Collette obviously was very switched on as well. You know, he knew a lot about running one of these cars and everything. And then of course you had Conrad, who, you know, he's burnt more nitro than anybody in the pits, I think, and probably spilled more on the ground than anybody in the pits too. We used to tell him years ago, but you know, it's amazing to have a guy like Clay who, you know, he just really understands the race car. He understands what's going on inside of it. And the feedback that you get out of him is amazing. And Bruce and I have talked about this. He has the same thing with Phil. And, you know, the only shame of it is, and Joe, you and I talked about this before, is that, you know, Bruce and Phil, it takes them probably 3 to 4 years to make the amount of runs that we would make in a year. And, you know, and what they do with the limited amount of time they have on the racetrack is nothing short of amazing. And I know I could speak, like I've been down there and I've watched Phil drive, and the sense that he has in a race car is amazing. And that's great for guys like Phil and, you know, for Bruce and I to have drivers like Clay and Phil who really know what's going on, you know, behind the wheel, and they're not just, as Connie used to say, drivers are like spark plugs. You screw them in the seat and you screw them out. These guys are more than spark plugs, in my opinion. They're you know, fantastic feedback for us.
A lot of positive stuff there, Phil. I'd love to hear.
I want to hop in there real quick
Yeah,
on
go
that.
do it. Do it, Clay. Do it, Clay.
There's a lot of communication, whether it's, you know, Bruce and Phil racing or us racing. There's a lot of text and communication going back and forth between the two of those guys. Me and Phil, we've only had some goofy little videos swapped back and forth that we could talk about. But, you know, I hear some of this stuff and I'm like, I don't know how Phil is able to do what he does. And again, we haven't met. This is the first time we've like really actually talked, Phil and I, and Phil's been quiet this whole time, basically. But let me just tell you, from 20 something years of doing this, I don't know how he's as good as he is with the limited amount of runs he gets, because during the off season, until the first time we go testing, the first time I get back in a car, it is like, holy moly fast. You know, it takes a few runs before you kind of get that sense back around you of what's going on. And these guys in Australia, they only get to do it a handful of times a year. So I'm just going to tell you that what he does is not easy, because those runs are so valuable for the driver just to get acclimated to what's happening. You know, I always say every time we go testing after the off season, it's like, the roller coaster is still really fast and still really fun, but the limited amount of runs he gets just shows how good he really is at what he does.
Thank you, Clay. You're making me sound better than I am. I find it, I don't know, maybe I'm getting old or something, but I mean, we'd love to do as many runs as what you guys do over there, but the thing that I find is, because we're basically now here, we've actually stepped up our program because we sort of run once a month. But yeah, the first couple of runs is like, it's, you think, oh, you know, I'm at half track already, but I've never had an issue with that. Like the last few years, even when I had the 3 years off, it was just like riding a bike. I don't know, I wouldn't like to, you know, make myself sound good, but to me, it's sort of just a natural thing. And I started to wonder whether or not, you know, I'm doing stuff in the car that I don't even realize I'm doing, because it's just a natural reaction, and whether I was getting too old to be doing this. So, but yeah, like in Perth, we did one run and it actually moved violently to the center line. I brought it back, but it wasn't until I saw the video I realized how bad it was. So it's like, I don't know, I just find it, I don't want to say easy, but I just find it as, whether it's, you know, I obviously haven't done as many runs as what the guys have in America, but I have been doing it a fair while now. So, but it's when I say it's easy, it's not easy, but it's not, oh, shit moments, you know what I mean?
Right.
If I'm allowed to swear.
Of course. I think some of that being natural for you is probably because the amount of runs you saw growing up. You know, I think you were, I don't know what you call that. Osmosis, is that a fancy word for that? Somebody help me with that, where you just naturally absorb what's going on around you. You know, I think that probably because y'all have done that for so long, that maybe it does come a little natural, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's funny, I talk to other drivers over here and they say stuff and I think, well, I don't think that's right, and just they experience things differently to what I do. It's hard to put your finger on it, but I'm thinking, you know, we had a guy drive one of our cars down here and I used to talk to him in the lounge because we shared the same lounge, and I you know, sometimes think, well, you know, if I was feeling that, I'd be concerned, you know what I mean? It's just different. And as people ask, and you've probably been asked 1,000 times, Clay, what it's like, you can't explain what it's like, because it is what it is. You just do what you do. And yeah, so but I was fortunate enough too to learn off a few, like Scott Colletta when he come down here, when Grubby drove down here, and even when Hillary came down here with Jimmo and all the drivers, Corey Mack. You know, you pick up little bits here and there, and you're always learning.
Agreed.
What about it, Phil? I asked your brother, I'll put you on the spot too. You know, Santo brought his cars over a couple of years ago. And of course, running down there and running for championships is huge. But would you like to drive in the States at some point?
Oh, I've always wanted to. Best advice I ever had, and whether Frank Hawley's listening to this or not, but Mike Dunn came down here for our opening race when my dad built Sydney Dragway. And he came up to me and he said, because obviously my dad had been driving for so long, he said to me, "You're going to drive?" I said, "Yep." He said, "You don't learn all your dad's mistakes." He said, "Your dad's a great driver." He said, "You need to go to Hawley's." He said, "He's an arrogant asshole, but he'll teach you well." That's his exact words to me. And I said, I'm sort of looking at him thinking, okay. And to be honest with you, it is probably the best thing I ever did. Like, I still recommend to everybody to go to Frank Hawley's, even though I only had like 2-3 days with Frank. He taught me so much up here. Just the whole Hawley experience just taught me, you know, stuff that my dad couldn't teach me. Like, I did learn a lot off my dad, but yeah, just all that Hawley experience, I call it, with the psychological stuff. And it's funny, years after, I would use it on my wife, like the stuff that he taught, and she'd go, "Don't you Frank Hawley me," like when we're having disputes at home. So, but yeah, but yes, I would love to race over there, but it's all about the money. That's the problem we have here. Our dollar at the moment isn't very good. So you basically consider, we want to come there and race, it's double what you're paying.
Right.
So, which makes it not very viable. I mean, can we afford it? Yes. Do we want to part with the money? Probably not.
Well, here's the thing. If I wasn't built like such a little bitty girl, we could just put 2 cars together, but I don't think you would have any opportunity to fit in the little bitty car that I drive.
How tall are you, Phil?
6'2". And to quote another guy, Johnny West, I doubt he'd be watching. I remember when we went over and we purchased a car, it was the ex-MBNA car. Dad, he was talking to my dad and he goes, "So who's going to drive?" He goes, "My son over there." He goes, "Him? He's a giant. What would you put him in the car for?" So it was like, you know, I'm not the perfect, you know, we need like jockeys, which is what Clay is basically.
Yeah.
Sorry, Clay, but he's right. I'm right there with you, bud, and I can't even drive. So that is amazing. All right, I want to keep on rolling with this. I want to ask a couple of techie style questions for Jimmo, just because you guys ripped off a couple of really good runs second half of the year. Got to be able to go into the 60s. You've got to be able to go down into the 60s, and not just high 60s, mid 60s. And one thing that I have learned is that there's a tremendous gulf between the 70s and the 60s. Like, you got to step on it in a multiple of what you would do. Can you talk a little bit about that for those of us, you know, obviously Clay and Phil, they understand, but for guys that are round track guys out there, the difference between running 3.75 and running 3.65 to 1,000 feet is a massive difference in terms of like parts, you know, like how long they will last and how hard you run them. It's just a totally different kind of flying altogether. Can you talk a little bit about that, Jimbo?
Yeah, like you know, a good example, like during the summer and those races that I was talking about where we were in these close races, you know, we just weren't pushing it as hard. Like, so we weren't running the blower as hard. We weren't running the ignition timing curve as hard. We weren't pushing the clutch as hard as we normally would. And, you know, we'd make these runs and the parts would come back and would look real good. And Clay and I would go, shoot, we're able to go make another run, or we can go make another race. And, you know, when we got to Indy and, you know, we lost first round that race, real close race. It put a cylinder out on the other end. And I told myself, I said, I'm not going to let this car do that anymore. I said, I have to be more aggressive with it. And really what it boiled down to, hey, you know, we got some nice new parts, you know, Rick Ware, you know, I asked him if we can buy a new supercharger, and he's like, sure, what's that cost? And I said, well, it's about $18,000. And he says, yep, go ahead and get it. Darren Mayer from DMPE, he had one left on the shelf. He says, it's the last one I've got, and I'm not going to have any more, you know, the rest of the year. So Rick allowed us to get that. And really what it did, we just started pushing it harder. And it's, you know, it started at Reading. And, you know, our first goal was to try to make the car run faster. So we were running these 372s at like 323, 324. And it was like people were driving around us on the other end. And I believe it was at Reading, we ran 329 a couple times. And it kind of like, all right, this thing's running faster, you know, on the other end, which is going to help us a little bit. And then at Charlotte, we started running some 330 mile an hour times. And, you know, but that distance or that change from running in the mid 370s to the, you know, to 360s is massive. It's just being more aggressive with your overall setup, you know, just, and we started having more confidence in what our setup was and what we were doing. We kind of hit on something and we just started being a lot more aggressive, and almost to the point like at Pomona, we were a little bit too aggressive. I was, you know, on some of our setups, and it was, you know, we pushed a head gasket out here and there, and it just was a little too aggressive, you know, so we have to, you know, back it down a little bit, you know, when we get in conditions like we had at Pomona. But, man, I'll tell you what, like when you're out there and you're butting heads with, you know, like Grubby, we all know how Grubby is. He's a madman. And, you know, and then you had Austin Prock's car with Tobler and Joe doing a great job with that car. And you know, there's the Mike Green, Tommy Delago, you know, what they do with Justin Ashley's car. You know, the two Coletta cars, you know that they're going to come around one of these days, and they're going to, you know, be back to, you know, we all know how Alan Johnson is, and, you know, he's going to, you know, step up his program a lot. And, you know, and then the Torrance, you know, car, I mean, that thing's a rocket ship. I mean, there's just so many of these cars, and you can't take anybody lightly. There's no layups in first round, basically. You've got to go out and run hard. And I think for us, we've just really started to better understand our setup and what it wants to run those numbers. And I know first round at Pomona, well, that thing was bucking along pretty good. It wasn't going to run Clay's quickest run ever, which that's good. That's kind of hard to beat when he run 362. But, you know, we were pretty confident it was going to run a 66, and which would have been a great number for us. And you know, and we just said, I just missed it on the other end with the timing curve and maybe some fuel volume. But you know, it's now we're getting to the point where we really have a lot of confidence in what we're doing, and we're just going to keep pushing that thing harder because, you know, you have to in top fuel racing, and you can't think that you can just go and overlook somebody first round. I mean, you know, you know, you run Tony Schumacher first round. When you look at like the top 12 in points, and I think Tony Schumacher finished either 11th or 12th. I mean, there's a guy that's won how many world championships? 8,
Yeah,
I think it is.
Yeah, he finished
And,
12th.
You know, a ton of races, and he finished 12th. You know, Leah Pruitt's car, you know, finished 11th, and that's an awesome race car. And then you look at, you know, Josh Hart. I mean, look at that guy. You know how great of a job he's doing with Ron Douglas and you know, Mike Salinas and Rob Flynn. I mean, there's just so many awesome race cars in Top Fuel that, you know, you have to, you know, as my dad told me, he says, you better wear your big boy pants when you go out there first round. And we've had to. And it's hardball out there, but it's fun. I like it the way it is. And, you know, I mean, some people look at like Steve Torrance, oh, he had an off year, he finished 6th. That's still an awesome race car. And I think the competition, I think Steve Torrance himself made everybody work harder to try to run better. And, you know, and I think, you know, some of the credit of this Top Fuel class is just everybody, you know, wanting to run better to chase him down. And it's tough when you're in a position like Steve. I mean, winning 4 championships in a row, and you've got that bullseye on your back, and you know Grubnick, he was coming for him, you know, for the last couple of years, and you know, and we're trying to come for him, and Justin Ashley and all these guys are, you know, are trying to pick him off, but you know, the guy still finished, you know, and he would probably say, oh, we sucked or whatever, and Hogan would say the same thing, and Bobby Logano would. We finished, I think they finished 6th, but that's still
6th.
An amazing race car. That, I mean, some of the numbers that thing was putting up early on, it's pretty frightening, you know, how quick that car can run.
Yeah. So let me ask you, because I'm noticing a trend, you know, Grubby's name has got mentioned several times. Clay, you worked with him. He's Australian. Jimmo, you worked with him over at Coletta. This guy goes on and wins his first Top Fuel World Championship. We're going to hear from Brittany on EPAR Trade Industry Week later on in the week, I believe on Friday. But just this guy's career in drag racing, a driver, amazing. But then to get the opportunity with Clay and Doug to be a crew chief and do what he did with that 62 you're talking about, those thunderous runs, obviously goes to John Force Racing, takes a little time, but then wins the world championship. This guy has got to be up there, like for Drag Race Australia, Bruce. David Grubnick's got to be one of the great heroes, right? But you tell me, what's the rep down there, as you sent one of yours here and he conquered the world?
Well, that's true. And typical Australia, we don't laud our heroes as well as we should down here. And of course, drag racing is such a small part of the motor racing fraternity down here. He doesn't get the accolades that he should, and certainly doesn't get the credit. I mean, drag racers know who he is, and they talk about him fondly. I mean, Phil and I talk about him fondly because he's a lunatic, and when you're around him, it's he's quite the nut job, and but he doesn't get the kudos as a lot of sportsmen down here. One of the drivers for Rick Ware's IMSA team is an Australian, and you mentioned his name down here, nobody knows him because he left home, he went to Europe, and now he's at Rick's driving his IMSA car. And so we don't, we only celebrate our mainstream sporting heroes such as soccer, football, cricket, and sometimes the Olympics with our swimmers, because we've jousted with the Americans for years at Olympic swimming. But motor racing, Danny Ricciardo is probably our most famous export since Alan Jones, and before that, Jack Brabham. Richie Crampton doesn't get enough kudos. Jace, the kid that crashed at St. Louis, Jason
Grima.
Jason Grima, is that terrible? His name just went out of my head. Jason Grima, the Tuckers, Steve Harker. all those guys have been over there and done very well. Wally Clark's an ex-Australian. Well, he's not ex-Australian, he is Australian. But we don't, amongst the, you know, tens of thousands of drag racing fans down here, everybody knows them, but outside of that, it's pretty quiet. And Dave will probably just be put into that category where amongst us all down here, we'll talk about him fondly and be amazed at his achievements, and God knows what else he's got up his sleeve in the years to come. But outside of that, it's a shame that we don't laud our fringe. A very good friend of ours, for instance, well, my partner Kim and I, his daughter is a multi-time world moto endurance champion, a female, Jess Gardner. When she comes back to Australia, she drives a truck out here at the local quarry for the local earth moving company. But she's a fully fledged Yamaha rider, but she gets nothing here, not on the news, not in the papers, nothing. Wow. So it's the way of things.
Well, and you know, and I hate to bring up something negative, but it drives home the point though. When something negative does happen, as you guys experienced on the starting line earlier this year, boy, does it go all around the world. And that is unfortunate that you guys had to go through that. Hopefully Gus is okay and doing well. But that was publicity, probably not the kind you wanted though.
No,
well, no. It was received in good terms with a few of our sponsors, like our corporate people. But yeah, it was amazing because we were the lead story on our Channel 7 News down here, which is one of our big broadcasters. During an election, I think the floods were on and there was a whole heap of other stuff happening. And the war in Ukraine was escalating, yet we were the lead story, which is, you know, not a good thing, but a good thing, if you know what I mean, because we got a lot of coverage out of it.
Yeah, worldwide story and interesting. And, you know, that's probably, I mean, I don't want to say it was a good thing, but a lot of people learned some lessons there from your unfortunate experience.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of the other teams reached out. I spoke to Clay about this, spoke to Jimmo, spoke to Dom Lagana and Bobby. Phil spoke to Grubby about the processes of ensuring that your fuel system is completely dry between warm up and going out on the start line, and just changing some techniques and procedures. And I mean, even on we're running an alcohol dragster now. My son and Phil's son, Adam and Curtis, are currently licensing in an alcohol dragster that Phil bought for them to muck around in, and we're even sensitive about making sure that there's no fuel in the lines, and we back it down and make sure it's completely dry before we go out to warm it up. So if there was anything good to come out of it, it was worldwide. But I mean, we weren't the first team to do that, and I would hope we'll be the last, but I would say not.
Yeah, well, hopefully one can wish, but you know what you guys went through, it was not in vain, right? People watched and learned and thought about it, and hopefully you're going to take that. A couple minutes to go here, guys. You know, like there's so much out here on the table. Clay, I would love for you, I'm kind of shocking, but it makes sense that you had just met Phil right here. I would love for you to like ask Phil a question about drag racing Australia. You've never raced down there, have you, Clay?
I haven't. I have not. I mean, I have, you know, traveled the world because of racing, and somehow, some way, I've never made it to Australia yet. And I kind of covered a little bit, you know, about no more runs than Phil gets. I see you there. I'm looking at my clock too. You see?
Oh, I'm saying the clock's ticking, dude. You should be coming in January with him. So
my real question, or one of my questions I would love to ask Phil about, is what for you is the most exciting part of the run? And I know that is kind of a fan type question, but this is a driver to driver question. Like for you, what is the funnest part of the run? That is question one. Question two being, what is the hardest part of the run?
Question one, probably half track on, when you know it's right and it's starting to pull hard. And then when you go through the finish line, and from a driver, I know straight away if the motor's hurt from a driver's standpoint. yeah, that's probably the funnest part of the run, and obviously winning. Hardest part of the run, and with this new car that we've got, is the start line, because my reactions have dropped off, and I'll be the first to admit my reactions have dropped off in this car compared to the car that I drove for so many years, which we're working around, and I'm trying to, yeah, but that's the hardest part. And as Bruce hit on before, our competition down here at the moment is probably the hardest it's ever been. It was hard years ago when I first started racing, but now, like you guys, we got six cars down here that can win anytime they roll through the gate. Anybody can win. So the job of the driver is even more important. Whereas before, you know, I was on my game, but you know, you come up, you didn't really think about it until you came up against a car that you know could flat out run you. So, and now every car here can flat out run you. So, answer the question too is probably the start line, and Jimmo can kick my ass or, you know, pep me up when he comes down, and we go for a nice massage somewhere.
Phil, you just got to
Get
blame
me ready.
Phil. Blame the tuner. That's the deal, man. Shut up, right?
It
Like,
is.
it's not reacting. I don't know what's
Yeah,
going.
That's right.
And then of course, then I've got the other hard part is my dad's in the background. The minute I come back, you got left on. You got left on. He's an old driver. You got left on. And one time I did it.
I want to hit in on this real quickly, and this is the driver taking up for driver, and I think Crew Chief Jimmo will back me up on what I'm about to say here. So I did drive the quickest car on the planet, and I got left on all the time. And I'm still driving the same car, but my reaction times have drastically picked up. So Bruce, I'm just going to blame it on you that his reaction times have fell off. Jimmo has picked up my reaction time in our car, and we're not done with that. The car has so much to do with it. Some crew chiefs won't admit it, but Jimmo will definitely admit that we can prove it, that we've made the car react quicker. We've proven it.
When you come down here at Christmas.
Yeah, it's a combination of things, and you know, the driver's got to be good. There's no doubt about it, and you know, but the car's got to be equally as good and has to react, you know, the way that it should, and that's something that, you know, I've been fortunate to be part of. You know, some times where the car wasn't reacting good, and the driver, you know, it showed for, you know, in poor reaction times, and you know, we would work on that and try to make it better, and you know, it's a lot of work, you know, and it's a lot of just paying attention to things, and that's the one thing, you know, that's really great about Clay is, you know, he knows, like, you know, we have 3 or 4 injectors in our trailer, and he'll tell you, well, I like this one the best, you know, and there could be nothing mechanically different about him or anything, but you know what, it's what he wants. And if he feels more confident about that, it's no different than me saying, you know what, I like this blower number 1708 better than, you know, blower 1822, and I want to run, you know, this 1708. They may not mechanically be any better, but it makes me feel better that it's on the race car. So it's just a lot of, it's just really working together and working with each other. And I know Bruce, he's trying real hard, you know, to help Phil out as well. And that's something that, you know, hopefully when I get down there that, you know, the 3 of us can put our heads together and kind of think about ways that we can, you know, help Phil out, because we know Phil's a great driver and we know Phil can cut a light. We just, you know, something's missing in the car, and we just got to figure that out and see if we can't, you know, pick those RTs up. But, you know, it's a team. And I never forget, and I've said this before, probably one of the coolest things I ever saw. I had a friend of mine, actually a friend of my dad's that he raced with, a guy by the name of Charlie Seegers. And he was an old drag racer who ended up building, he was Jeff Gordon's engine builder. So he worked in the 24 shop, and he built engines for Jeff Gordon's team. And after one of our races in Rockingham, you know, Charlie invited us up to the Hendricks shop, and it's the first time I'd ever been to a NASCAR shop and anything like that. And we walk into the 24 car shop, and there's this big sign there that says team. And team was, spelled out vertical, and it was all in big letters, and it says together everyone achieves more. And that was something that I've never forgotten. And I apply that towards everything. And it goes towards, working with your driver instead of just saying, oh, your driver is no good, can't cut a light. It's like, let's be a team, because together we're going to achieve more. And that's something that I think, I think Clay and we've just like scratched the surface on what our teamwork's going to be moving forward. And, the more we work together, the more we have each other's backs, the better off we're going to be. And I told Jim Reed this one time, because the hardest thing like Bruce and Phil has is that their dad is who he is. He's a legendary, he's the John Force of Australian drag racing and then some. And, so he's always going to be their biggest critic. He's also their biggest fan. But I told Jim, I go, you couldn't ask for anything better tuning your race car than your son, Bruce, or anybody better in driving your race car than your son, Phil. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. And, they have a great team down there. And those guys, going back to that startup explosion and how they bounced back and went to the next race. I mean, they are an epitome of a team down there. So I think like the four of us, we have something, really special going, into the next season. Bruce and Phil, they're in the middle of, or just starting their season. They've done a couple races now. And for us going into 2023, it's all about, that team and working together and having each other's back. And I think that's what's going to help propel both of our teams into some final rounds and hopefully some race wins and competing for a championship.
Well, I wish you the best. I see Judy and Francisca are on. I just want to say to Bruce and to Phil, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Of course, Clay is a buddy. Clay, I wish you great luck. Of course, we'll see you guys at PRI, Jimmo, of course, as well. Great conversation, gentlemen. So awesome. And like bringing the worlds of drag racing together on Industry Week here at ePart Trade. Just amazing. Thank you.
I really feel like I'm breaking up a bro party here.
You are.
We'd talk for hours, right, Clay? We would probably talk until we're out of breath.
Good stories.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Registering on ePart Trade is easy. To start, click on the Join for Free button on the homepage. First, search your company to see if it's already in our database. If you see your company on the list, click on it to select it. Then, choose Claim Company if you are one of the decision makers, an owner, marketing person, or main company contact. Or choose Join Company if you are an employee, and press Continue. If you couldn't find your company in our database, select Register a New Company. On the following page, fill out your name, email, phone number, job title, and choose a secure password. If you chose Register a New Company, you'll need to choose your business type. Select Supplier if you're looking to display products or services and connect with buyers. Choose Racing Business if you're looking to source new parts and connect with suppliers. Choose Race Team if you own or are a member of a professional race team. Then, enter your company name. Please provide a website, Facebook page, or LinkedIn if you have one, and choose to either claim or join the company. You can view and agree to our terms of use here. If you'd like to receive our weekly newsletter, choose Accept. Finally, click Register Now and your registration will be submitted for approval. An email will be sent to your inbox. Please confirm your email address and you will be approved shortly. Welcome to ePart Trade.